with Ian Crown in Puerto Rico, and he has a large farm of tropical fruits. I was going to ask him a few questions. He's one of the only growers of durian here in Puerto Rico, which is pretty interesting since durian has only recently been introduced to Puerto Rico. So,
yeah, there are trees that have been here for decades. Most of them are seedlings, and they didn't really seem to trigger much interest. They were more a novelty. So one of the ag stations had a man working there who had seeds, planted them around his house up in Maracau, which is a city one up from here. But it's too cool up there, so they wouldn't really be fruitful. It's just too cool, too much rain. But down at this location, 250 to 920 feet, it's warm enough, we have enough rain, and they do really well here.
So how many durians do you have on your property?
I have to guess we have over 80.
Over 80 trees,
Correct.
and you have 5 different varieties from Malaysia?
I have at least 5, it may be 6.
Maybe 6?
Yeah.
Very
Then I have
cool.
seedlings, and I had, from a shipment from Hawaii back in the 90s, there were 9 trees before the hurricane and 3 after. And from what you said, one's probably a D24, and the other one may be a gampon, but whatever it is, it's self-fertile. It produced large numbers of fruits before there were any other durian trees flowering, so it wasn't in need of cross-pollination.
And what triggered your interest in tropical fruits, and particularly durian?
I've been interested in horticulture since I was a little kid. So I went to school for agriculture, and then with that degree, I wasn't sure I'd ever get to put it to work, and then the opportunity came. My wife enabled me to do this. It's with her blessing. So in '94, we started looking for property to grow coffee. Why coffee? I'm from upstate New York. Why would I grow coffee? It was just a fascination with Puerto Rico, the climate, and I thought I can grow the kind of coffee I would like to drink. So that's where we started. I was here looking for farm property at locations above 2,000 feet, so 6,000 meters, and I was very close to buying one man's farm. He was later indicted for embezzling. Long story. But while I'm looking at this, I've read a couple of monographs on coffee, so I'm good to go. I'm ready to do this. And then the decision, shade grown versus sun grown. So this is before anyone invented the internet. I'm driving to the library, and I get my hands on a paper, and roughly the title was Underutilized Fruit Trees from Southeast Asia. And I saw this list of trees, and it just sort of, not a light bulb, but it was just a sort of sense that I don't need to use a lot of pesticides to try to force coffee to produce the best possible fruit that it can, or product. I'd rather grow the fruit trees. So that was it. At that point, coffee, so to speak, was on the back burner, and the exotic fruit trees were on the front burner, and that included mangosteen, rambutan, the longan from China came later. The durian were in the very first mix. First time I read about durian was a front page story on the Wall Street Journal. Very funny article. Yeah. It wasn't a glowing endorsement, shall we say, but it was an exposure to more information about the fruit and the sort of whole culture that you have explored, actually, in Southeast Asia that surrounds that extraordinary fruit. So that's more or less the genesis of the farm.
And when did you first taste a durian?
The first one that I had was probably back in the 90s at the experimental, it was at the USDA, and one of their seedling trees had produced a fruit, and I was invited to come over and try it.
Is that here in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, TARS down in Mayaguez, the Tropical Agricultural Research Station.
So your first durian was a Puerto Rican durian?
Correct, a seedling, and it was, I always tell people it's like fugu, the Japanese fish that has the toxins. It's like a dare. So some people can't get past the odor and the dare is over. Other people try it and then never do again. And then the rest of us try it and that's it. You're in love.
So first time you loved it?
First time I was sort of confused. It was a combination of all the flavors that everyone talks about, the sort of distraction of onion, the very sort of rich caramel, butterscotch quality, burnt sugar flavors, and this was a seedling, so there was a hint of bitter, not much, it was very mild. And but the funny part was, if you walk up the stairs at TARS, it's a massive building, and it has, 20 steps, and as you're walking up, you're still outdoors. It's a large, old stone building. And I was there to try the durian. So I get to the top step, and I'm trying to figure out, should I go to the office? And at that moment, I thought, oh, God, I know right where it is.
You smelled it?
So I took a left, and I just headed across, still outdoors, the open air, and I opened the door, and the smell was kind of cloying because it had filled up the whole room. And there it was in a sink. And I was like, okay, I know where it is.
Right.
So that was the first time I tried it. The weird thing is, a day later, all I could think about was how I wanted more. It's some strange effect that once you process it all, you realize, God, you love it. So I already decided I was going to grow them anyway. It didn't matter if I liked them.
Right.
I was going to grow them as part of my sort of suite of Southeast Asian fruits. But at that point, it meant more to me than it did to pretty much anyone else. So,
wow, so you became obsessed with it. Well, not maybe obsessed, but
I had so many
interested.
other trees, and this was going to be one more.
Right.
And on one occasion, without getting into details that would upset people, I had a huge shipment seized at the airport at JFK, and I lost over 600 trees.
Durian trees or
yeah,
just big
durian,
variety?
just durian.
Just durian.
So
Wow.
that made me even more determined. And that's when I got this next batch, the last
Okay.
little ones that comprise the field on the other side with the roughly 75 trees.
How did you get them here? Are
They came from Singapore.
Okay.
I have the USDA plant import permit, and those are not part of what they call the PEQ, or post-entry quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't need to be kept in a certain area. Actually, maybe they are. They may be. But you need to get them reset and stabilized after being bare rooted. It's a very traumatic process. And once the roots are completely stripped and clean, at that point, you have a tree that really has the clock ticking. So we planted them, we saved probably 90%, and they went into the field. You always lose durian at every stage. So that was, as I said, it was part of a bunch of other trees. Pulisan, I had to have the pulisan because it was so much
Right.
cooler than rambutan. The longhead I mentioned. I have over a dozen species, cultivars, varieties of rambutan. So all of this sort of became part of this grouping of trees, but the durian had to be a part of it. And I didn't get the impression anyone else really thought this was a good idea. I mean, it was always kind of viewed as, if you insist.
Must
you
have
know,
the durian.
Yeah, or, well, you're the boss. But now my whole crew, with the exception of one person, loves it.
Oh, yeah?
It's kind of like for all the fruits that are out there, it's the only one that makes me think that someone added dairy to make it into a rich custard. It's too rich to be from a tree. And I know how you feel about dairy and all that other, but I'm just saying, the first time I had it, I thought it reminded me of creme brulee with the slight bitterness that comes from, burning the sugar to caramelize it. And it had all those qualities, and then the rest of it was irrelevant. I didn't mind the distracting flavors. I always tell people it's like, if you've ever had a really strong piece of brie or camembert or Appenzeller, if the smell stops you, you're not going to try it. But if you can get past the smell, you may find yourself loving the cheese. And it's the
Right.
same with durian.
So which of your trees is the most interesting to you right now?
Of the durian or in
Or
general?
just in general of all your trees? I know you have, how many species of fruit do you have out
I have
here?
about 30 different species species and their cultivars or varieties. I have 2 tropical nuts. One, the okari, which is a massive tree. I love that. It's a delicious nut. I also have pili nut, the one from the Philippines. Those are 2 really delicious nuts. With some embarrassment, somewhere on the farm, I have a few trees of something called a suwari nut,
Okay.
and we don't know where they got planted. That's the best nut I've ever had in my life. It's
Okay.
about the size and shape. Well, it's about the shape of and 4 times the size of a cashew. It's also called the butternut, and when you bite through it, the teeth leave a groove as if you ate a piece of butter.
Oh, weird.
It's so cool
Wow.
and delicious and huge, and someday I hope we find those trees.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a lot of land, so I can understand how you would lose it.
It's record keeping is harder when the wind picks up to 150 and all the tags are just twisted and ripped off.
Right.
So the durian ended up being unlabeled. The rambutan, no matter how we attached the labels, the wind would just twist and eventually the label would blow away.
Right.
There were ways that we could have done it. We didn't do a great job. So I guess
Okay.
the most interesting one, I don't have a most interesting one. I can't do that.
You can't pick.
Today when we had the the interspecific cross. I've been waiting for years to try that durian because of what I
Right.
read about it.
It was a durian that was a cross between a graveolens and a zibithinus, two species, and it was
Correct.
fantastic.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
being an interspecific cross also had appeal because you get some hybrid vigor and you get the potential for reduced susceptibility to Phytophthora because of that hybrid vigor. So amongst all the different qualities that it had, I also hoped it tasted good. And I
Right.
don't know that it was more or less smelly. It was more
No.
that it was just a rich flavor.
It was very rich,
Yeah, it was
very
a good
smooth.
fruit.
It was good, and a beautiful color.
Yeah, very
Beautiful.
pretty. Yeah, very pretty.
So how does durian do out here? Do you have trouble with Phytophthora or
We
any other
do.
diseases?
We've had a lightning hit. The
Right.
problem is planting them in the right spot. They can end up 45 or 50 feet wide easily. They should never have been planted near the roads. But when you finally sort of get all the criteria satisfied and put them in a good spot, there's not much that can stop them. They grow
Right.
so fast here once they get going.
Well,
You
it
saw
does
the trees.
seem
They look
the-
like Christmas trees.
Yeah, and the fruit was great. We had really wonderful fruit today.
And they're young
So I
trees.
say they're very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they
So-
should get better in time as they
Yeah.
mature and you get more depth, literally and figuratively. The roots are reaching out and you get more chemicals, you get a little bit more phytochemistry.
Yeah.
So there'll be some enriching of the flavor, but not bad for a start.
Oh, it's fantastic. Fantastic start, I say. You know, I've
Okay.
been around. So, when's the season here?
Normally, they flower in February or March, so you add a good 120 days. Earliest one I've ever seen was the end of July, but it's almost always August.
And the season's pretty regular?
It is. It
It
is.
is?
And
Okay.
we're still, as I said, you saw most of my trees aren't even in production.
Right.
So each year we'll go up by probably a quarter to a half a ton. And at some point when I've got them all in production, I should easily be able to crank out 10 tons a year.
Wow, and right
Yeah.
now you've got, you said 800 pounds?
I've got, I'd say the whole harvest this year was about a ton.
About a ton. Wow, that's still a lot of durian.
It's very disappointing to me, but they're getting there.
And if anybody in the area is interested in purchasing durian from you, how would they do that?
The people who've been buying them from me found out from each other. They're in San Juan, and I honestly don't know what to tell you. They
Okay.
found us, and I'm not sure what they're doing. They might be selling them in San Juan to different ethnic food stores, but I don't have that much yet, so I'm not that worried
Right.
about being able to find it. Whereas the other fruits that I produce, I can tell you right where they are. The durian, I'm not really sure who's doing what with it.
Okay.
So I don't
Right.
know.
So you don't have people contact you to pick up
They're
durian?
calling
or-
and they're picking up, but I don't know where they take them. And I know all of it's going
Right.
to the Vietnamese, the Filipinos, and the Chinese in the San Juan metro area. And very little of it seems to be reaching Puerto Ricans. And the Vietnamese are really just enjoying them immensely.
So do you think there's a pretty good market for durian here?
I think so. Yeah,
think
not
so?
because of the Vietnamese who love it because of a childhood familiarity, but because my whole crew, with the exception of my manager, loves the fruit.
Right.
And when they first, met me and heard my crazy ideas, this was just one more crazy idea.
Right.
But
One more
as
crazy
they-
fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But once they started tasting, the rambutan was new for them, and now they're
Oh.
all in love. And no, gracias. Este es un video. The fruit that they tried, they started to have more and more opportunity to try. And at some point, I found out everyone loved the durian, which I thought was really funny.
That is
They're
great.
Puerto Ricans, and they are so exploratory as a group of people on fruit. So they had to try it,
Right.
and then they realized,
They liked it.
They had the bug. They were
Cool.
bitten.
Well, thank you very much, Ian.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for showing us around your farm and sharing those really great durian
Thank
with
you
us.
for coming. This is a hard trip, and I'm glad you made it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.